Everybody, I'm Matt Valley. Welcome to episode number 129 of the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, where we share the super cool backstories and side gigs of the research and insights pros that you trust. Well, hey, this is the first episode of 2025, so I'm really excited to welcome my new friend Michael Nevski to the podcast. So you might guess by seeing his background there that Michael Nevski works for Visa, where he's been for the last 4 years. He's the director of global insights there. And this is on the back of a really good career in insights. So he's worked client side, supplier side with great companies like Charles Schwab and Sterling Rice and IRI and more. But what's great about Michael is he gives back his time as well. He's heavily involved in the broader market research industry. And one example of that is he is a member of the advisory board for the TMRE conference, which many of you, I'm sure, have gone to. It's a great conference. A lot goes into it, so really happy to have people like Michael and others helping to steer that to the great conference that it is every year. Although this past year, I think was the hurricanes kind of interrupted that the conference this year, so it should be bigger and better in 2025, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. Now, here's something that a lot of you don't know. If you know Michael already, you may not know that he's quite an accomplished table tennis player. Of course, table tennis is colloquially known as ping pong. And I could say myself, I played a lot of this game while I was in college with my friends Kip Johnson and Chris St. John when we were supposed to be in calculus lectures. We'd sneak out or we'd skip that class and we'd play ping pong for an hour. But somehow I made it through. But hey, Michael really knows his stuff. So I'm super excited to talk about all that and more on today's podcast. So welcome to the show, Michael.
Matt, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here, especially you don't do interviews or podcasts every day with such a recognized professional like yourself from our industry, because lots
Thank
of
you.
opportunities we do usually outside of research or insights function. So I'm really excited about today's conversation. Thank you for
Yeah, me
having me.
too. Me too. And I have a love for table tennis. So I can't wait to hear about your experiences there. So should be a great conversation. Now, before we get started, I have to say a word about my excellent sponsor, which is Magic Mind. If you've watched this podcast over the past several months, you know that we've got a good partnership, which was just re-upped, by the way. So I'm very excited about that. Pretty cool that they would sponsor a super niche market research podcast like this one. So let me tell my story real quick. I've told this once before, but how did I get involved with Magic Mind? Well, I have this medical condition. I was talking to my doctor, and she said, I really recommend that you start taking some supplements, some things like ashwagandha and lion's mane and vitamin B12 and a bunch of other stuff that I had never really heard of. And right at the same time, Magic Mind had approached me about a potential sponsorship. I'm like, well, I need to see if this product is any good. And I looked at the ingredient list, and sure enough, it's all of those things that she told me I should be taking. So I'm like, this is meant to be. So what is Magic Mind? It's a performance enhancement shot. Gives you great clean energy, reduces stress, works out really well for me. I've actually reduced my coffee intake from 3 cups to 2 because I've got this Magic Mind for me each day. Now, one last thing I want to say about Magic Mind. They have this great promotion for January. They're promoting something that they call mental wealth. So it's about being mindful of all of those things that go into creating strong mental health, which would be sleep and diet and exercise and air quality and keeping stress low. So as part of that, I am supporting it. And they've also released a new Magic Mind performance sleep product, which is really cool. It kind of ties into all of that. So check out Magic Mind. Fortunately, there's a nice discount. So if you're watching this on video, you can see the link below www.magicmind.com/rock and roll Jan. Rock and roll Jan, that's the code. It's a 45% discount off of a nice little pack for you. So check it out. Works for me. I'm going to go down the hatch and then we're going to get started. Sound good, Michael?
Absolutely.
All right.
Awesome. Exciting.
Good stuff. All right. So let's talk insights. We're going to start there. Michael. You've had a really nice career. Found, on this podcast that there's been lots of different paths that take people into this space. So I'm curious to know, how did you first get started in the insights industry and then sort of take us up to present day?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So originally, I call myself a recovering marketer. Originally, I started in marketing, and after completing of my MBA, I went to advertising world and built a career and became VP of marketing for a distribution company. But eventually, about 15, 17 years ago, working for Danaher Corporation,
Mhm.
actually, I got trained in voice of the customer, and I was always curious to learn why people do what they do. And I was working for a B2B manufacturing company at the time, size of General Electric. So, as a matter of fact, Barry Culp now is leading General Electric, actually, and he was a CEO back then. And it's a company which manufactures dental equipment, water quality equipment, lots of manufacturing stuff. So, which
Okay.
normally we don't even see as the consumers because they're behind the scenes. So, but point is that when I got trained, I started getting involved more and more in understanding those semantics, how to interview product managers, how to interview users, use cases. And before I would partner with marketing, but actually that curiosity led me to really transition into the market research or marketing research because I realized that actually insights, we as professionals identify those white spaces and
Right.
opportunities for companies. It's like a neck and a head, right? It's like some people might argue, but neck is turning around and then helps the head to navigate and look at the right direction. And that's what research is done and doing
Yeah.
for corporate world and for businesses. And I think it's very, very strategic. So to really identify those early trends and again, those opportunities, and that's how I transitioned into the marketing research. And it's
Okay.
very exciting time for me because marketing research is evolving. But in the current stage, what I do, I actually work directly with Chief Economist at Visa on a global scale, and I
Oh,
support consumer insights and marketing trends to bring that thought leadership in front of our major clients. I do lots of presentations, client presentations, identifying those trends, and my content usually is intertwined with economic analysis because I don't do economics. The economist on the team, but it's a very unique position because with my company, there's a unique combination of economics and consumer insights. Usually, you don't see that from major powerhouses. If you have an econ
right.
team, they focus on that. I started doing that while I was at Schwab because I was teaming up with economics team there and the investment teams there and corporate strategy team. And now I have an opportunity to really expand that practice, really supporting that presence and thought leadership in North America and around the globe. So that's what I
Yeah.
do presently.
Yeah, what a fascinating role. So you're providing insights that are delivered to Visa's clients rather than necessarily evaluating, say, a new credit card offer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not doing what so-called internal focus, right? My focus is external.
Yeah.
Really understand those trends, whether it's in US, Canada, or many other markets. And we have a separate team, batch structure, which focuses, excuse me, on supporting the brand,
Right.
supporting the new programs, and supporting clients in that respect. More traditional research and market research. My goal is to really identify those thought leadership opportunities. For example, a rise of a single person household in the United States. One
Hey,
third of all households in the United States are single person households. If we think of it this way, where it leads us in change of their consumption, how they consume products and services, how they live their
sure,
dwelling. For example, they utilize shopping as a socializing opportunities because think of it, me and you, we're not single people, but if we would, if you confine in the four walls of your dwelling, you when you go out, you're seeking for those opportunities to really socialize with other people, about other humans, and
sure.
that leads to different behavior when you go to a restaurant, when you go shopping, stuff like that. This is just a flavor. I'm not gonna waste your time and diving in all those nuances, but that's the type of research and opportunities I am seeking understanding how early adopters of generative AI nowadays,
Yeah,
consumers actually adapting that technology for shopping, for recommendations, for reviews. Are they relying more or less? Are they influencing other people, right? In how us as brands being perceived by generative AI, once consumers will build a much more reliable relationship, intimate relationship with the technology. We're not there yet, but it's coming. So, and us as brands, we need to be aware of that. We need to be cognizant of that, and we need to incorporate that. Not only have a talk how we can utilize generative AI in research, or how companies need to incorporate generative AI into the shopper's journey. It's
sure.
also about consumers building their own relationship with generative AI and how we as brands perceived by generative AI in terms of those recommendations and how those decisions by consumers might be changing. So.
Yeah, I mean, yours is a fascinating job in its own right at any point in time, but especially now, not only with generative AI, but also tremendous changes in demographics and household composition, not just in the US, but everywhere around the world. So no shortage of phenomena for you to study, I'm sure. Good stuff. Okay, so all that's great, but we gotta talk table tennis. So, I mean, when
My favorite one.
you are the first table tennis expert we've had on the podcast. So as soon as I learned that, I'm like, we've got to do this for sure. So tell me about your experience there, and do you still play?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're the first one who are really asking about that. That's really interesting, right? So in my case, yes, I got into the table tennis after pretty much wrapping up my original career when I was a child minor. I got involved and very much was into the volleyball,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
I raised to the level of NCAA equivalent growing up in the Soviet Union. So, and I played for my college. But when I
Wow.
realized that I'm not going to make that career actually, so definitely I started focusing more on my more traditional career, getting education and all that stuff. But same time, I wanted to do something else. And a friend of mine who was very highly ranked table tennis player in the Soviet Union and played for the one of the for my city where we used to live in St. Petersburg, where I'm originally from, and trained with the European champion actually. So his partner was a European champion in table tennis and teams competition. It was very fascinating for me to learn that. And so when I was in college, like pretty much 17, 18 years old, I started training, go to the table tennis club in my hometown and start getting kind of lessons. And I achieved certain level. It was never my intention to become a professional or anything like that, but
Right.
I achieved certain level. And throughout the years, and even moving to United States almost 30 years ago, and living in different states, I always seek opportunities to play with somebody somewhere, right? So,
Sure.
and cut to the chase, yes, I still do play table tennis. Once a week, I try to play with a friend of mine, friends. Several of us get together in the basement and we play on the weekends and stuff like that. So it's a great outlet to just continue be active, right? So socialize guys, and it's a great sport because definitely many people they perceive that as recreational, which is true in a sense. But once you start training, it's a real sport like any other, like soccer or volleyball or basketball. You really work out, and it's a very fast sport. That means lots of plyometrics, but the short distances. If a regular tennis, you really run. So with table tennis, it's a very short but very repetitive and fast movements. So, and even comparing to when my daughter was highly ranked competitive tennis player according to USTA and playing at big events. And one of her partners, competitors, Madison Key, who you probably know because she's
Yeah.
a professional on the circuit. So my daughter decided not to play when she was 13, 14, and she decided to quit big tennis, although she had all those sponsorships from Prince and Wilson and stuff. And many people don't know about that chapter of my life and career because it was a second job to me to help her to play because, as you know, in the United States, it's all based on the family support and stuff like that, lots of travel.
Right.
So, but point is that those sports, because I had a table tennis background, it helped me to kind of test until she was age of probably 7 or 8 to hold it and help her with training. Beyond that point, she would pretty much sweep me off the court with the ball. So
Yeah.
because those top 20 kids in the country, usually within each group, they're so great and so good. So it's yeah, people you can only imagine, right? So I kind of stopped training with her because I couldn't put up or keep up with her level. So I've passed that age. But point is that because of that background, it helped me to actually coordinate well between those two sports and have those
Sure.
lots of familiarities in a sense. It just kind of a little bit of a more mini and different a mini movement in terms of different focus in how you move in table tennis versus how you move in regular tennis, right? So stuff like that. But it's very fascinating, and I feel like lucky because I've been exposed and participated in those very popular sports, right? Which
Yeah.
actually give you so much, not only mentally, physically, but also socially, right? And open your horizons. It's
Sure.
in amazing world and amazing opportunity. So.
Yeah, now I have to ask because you're talking about table tennis and then you're so deeply involved in tennis with your daughter. I mean, the mashup of the two suggests pickleball. I'm curious to know what your take is on the pickleball phenomenon.
Actually, I love it. I try to play, and especially because it gives opportunity for people of all kinds of ages and those who never been physically active, right, or trained in sport. It's kind of this miniature golf in a sense. Even if you're not a
Yeah,
golfer, but you can try
right.
your skills and you can get some movement, and
Yeah,
that's why when people create it, right? Because there is a racquetball. And the racquetball is also very physical, as you know. You play in this
yeah,
close court and stuff like that. But pickleball, you can set up the net anywhere. I've seen that people would do that in like a high school field or somewhere like even
yeah,
elementary, by elementary school and stuff like that. People just play in the summer or throughout the season, and it's much easier to learn, right? So the technique is simpler, right? So the bounce is much slower in a sense than regular tennis or even table tennis, right? So I call it regular tennis because we're talking about ping pong, I guess, or tennis versus ping pong. So that's why I really love it because people who are like 60 or 70 can still play pickleball, right? So, and it's taking a world by storm. I see more and more people
sure.
play that sport actually in many places, in many states around the US. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. People play it all over here in Dallas, that's for sure. So, since you were so deep into the training with table tennis and such, I'm interested to know if there are any sort of lessons that you were able to pick up from that experience that you've been able to apply to your professional career.
Oh, absolutely. So resilience, resistance,
Resilience, yeah.
resistance as well, focus. My eyes are on the prize, right? In a sense. Also, it's probably from my volleyball time days, be a team player, support, right? So,
Right.
knowing how to contribute, but also understanding where to come in and where to pull back. also understanding that you can rely on how to learn to trust to other people and rely on their skills, especially
Hmm.
when you play doubles. For example, you play in a
Right.
volleyball on a volleyball team, right? So that's kind of that aspect of delegation, and also natural curiosity in terms of never stop learning new things, new techniques, new
Yeah.
approaches, observe other people, how they play, what they do, and the same applies to our work environment. What's the
Yeah.
best practices? Those are very, very important aspects. And last but not least, that mental toughness, right? So as you know, in
Right.
sport, especially individual sport, they work a lot with psychologists to develop kids and being that mental toughness, right? When you pretty much match point and you're losing, how to come back and recover. And those great players, right? So they actually, like Roger is my favorite, Roger Federer, and we were talking
Yeah.
about tennis, right? So Nadal or some other guys, right? Djokovic, Joker. So they all you've seen many times when they were pretty much on the brink of losing and they would recover, come back and win that match, right?
Yeah.
That kind of mental toughness is very, very important. Knowing that what to focus on, your priorities, and remove all the distractions. The same applies to your work, to your career, to your relationship. And those are probably key aspects I learned throughout my life. And I am glad that I was very serious into the sport in general because growing up, I used to train 6 days a week after school and on the weekends and summer camps and stuff like that.
Wow.
And it helped me a lot to really have that kind of a, in a good sense, tunnel vision sometimes when you
Right.
are really eyes on the prize, right? So
Yeah.
eyes on the prize. So that's kind of my experience. So.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's get back to insights for a minute. So you've had a very interesting background. You said you're a recovering marketer, right? And you've got this amazing role at Visa. And you've talked a bit about generative AI, but I'm interested to know from your perspective as you kind of look out into the future of insights, what do you see there?
That's a very good question, right? And actually, probably you would expect me to start talking about the generative AI, but I think some other aspects are very important to consider as we're going into the 2025 and beyond, right? So what I see some other trends, and I start there, actually, real-time data analytics is becoming central because companies and people also want to have that immediate uh, reward or action and companies as well, they trying to support that, pretty much support that individual experience, and that real-time analytics becoming more and more important. You remember that IoT, Internet of Things, a few years back, right? So, and I think that channel is going to be utilized much more how we interact on social media, digital touch points, devices, which are going to collect that data once we, as consumers, allow them. So, but also will allow for companies provide opportunities to really create real-time experiences and have that immediate reaction, even based on how you speak about a brand on social media and other outlets, collecting that data and actually understanding your sentiment, your attitude, right? Your kind of experience about the brand. The second aspect, personalization and macro segmentation, also becoming more sophisticated because when I was a talk a few years back about the mass customization, yada yada, but we didn't have a lots of progress. Now, uh, companies will have that opportunity even more to create those very macro segment customizable experiences, right? So not
Sure.
just general, okay, 25 to 55 years old, married,
Right.
living in the state. It's going to be much more nuanced in terms of the income, ethnicity, and many other aspects of hobbies, right? So because we start
Uh,
collecting those attributes of that type of data, which would allow us to do that. The third one, I would say, of course, generative AI, natural language processing, because they revolutionizing, excuse me, how companies understand consumer sentiment, like I already mentioned, because now I can do the 360 journey and look at all the touch points you're going through. Even offline soon, probably something we're gonna be able to capture and really understand your experiences as a consumer and sentiment, with even subtle changes in terms of your attitude, because it's a tone of voice or maybe speed of your speech, right? How you speak and stuff. So it's almost like the lie detector kind of thing, right? So we started understanding really what consumers, people are thinking about us as brands, about our products, experience interactive customer service. That one is gonna be much more rapid response and more immediate, I would say, in terms of the recommendations. So the two more points I see which going into the future, near future, is going to influence research in general. So behavioral science is becoming more integrated deeply with the market research.
For sure.
I see that more and more. And I think, again, generative AI, again, it's not a panacea, it's not going to solve everything, but it allows to connect that even much more active. So because companies moving beyond just asking customers what they want, right, and how they feel, they do this observation, right, more and more actively in putting that. If before, let's say you would do the simulation, right, you would do the focus group, so you start doing the ethnographies and following somebody. Now you can actually incorporate that into your purchase process while I'm, let's say, at your store, right?
Right.
And then I start actually connecting the stated data, the behavioral data, the purchase data, and get immediate trends and recommendations by generative AI again, and saying, hey, this customer lingered up there but decided not to buy because, I don't know, somebody touched him because maybe not enough space, maybe we got distracted by something else. I'm just making up, right? So and immediately there is a recommendation how to adjust that, right?
Yeah.
So, and last but not least, we talk about that a lot, privacy and ethical considerations, right? So I've done recent study on confrontational consumer when consumers have compelled a feeling to complain or discharge about any dissatisfaction in terms of interaction with us as brands, or actually dissatisfaction with product or service. And what happens is kind of creates this society where everybody listens to everybody, right? It's not only social influencers like Beyonce or somebody else. It becomes us as consumers influencing, like I go, Matt, I didn't have a good experience with this company because X, Y, and Z, and I put that on social media, and you see that, and you're like, oh, okay, this is a real review. This is my friend, and he's really been in this situation. You right away have that trust established. So, and you being influenced, and you start thinking differently. So, and where I'm leading that with ethical considerations, us as brands needs to be very transparent and very cognizant of that. So, and especially when we do the research, right? So privacy and ethical consideration become even more important, right? So we need to show consumers that we protect their data, right? So that we aware of their preferences and give them that freedom of being in charge of their data and data privacy and stuff like that, and influencing that. Those are probably key aspects of the research, which going forward excite me, but also making me think how we as brands can better cater to that, and how can we better incorporate that technology, if you will, or methodology or approach to actually keep up with the trends, and also even be ahead of our competition and deliver those memorable experiences for consumers.
Yeah, yeah, fascinating. You touched on a lot of things there. And I'm just thinking about the context. Like as you're talking, I see the Visa logo behind you and everything that you're saying, it just strikes me that these things are so paramount for a company like Visa, right? Obviously, privacy and security is critical. And then, some of the other things that the fact that you have so much behavioral data, you're right there at the point of purchase. Um, you've got a great perspective on these things, so I appreciate you sharing that. So
Yeah.
cool.
Thank
All
you.
right. Okay, Michael. So this is media, right? We're all busy people, but we only have so much time, but we all consume media. I'm interested to know, this can be personal, it could be professional. As go to turn something on, review some sources, what are you turning to? What are you watching? What are you reading? What's important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are several things, several components. Professional, either Journal of Marketing Research, right?
Yeah.
So that's one. You have professional media like Bloomberg and business sections of NPR and yada yada. But I also like to really read LinkedIn news. I also love to understand and read some new topics in terms of not necessarily research, but consumer overall trends or preferences or something. And those are written articles, for example, not necessarily from the research perspective, but from consumer kind of preference or a new technology coming up on the market. Well, right now, as we speak, the CES is going on in Vegas, as you know. So, what are the new trends? What new technology rolling out? But I also love to sit down and just kind of chill and take my mind off, but same time think more creatively. And one of my favorite authors, Haruki Murakami, probably many people know about 1Q84, so
Mhm.
trilogy book, but I love to just sit down and either read the book, but nowadays I'll be honest with you, because I love to run 5 to 7 miles, at least trying to do that once a week. I just put an audio book and listen. And while I run, it's a very good time to observe, listen, some kind of a novel. So I'm excited about the latest book Haruki Murakami published, and I believe it should be translated into the English and other languages very soon, or it was even just recently done in November. But pretty much taking my mind off to really kind of go into the world of fantasy or some novel and really kind of dissolve my mind into that, but it helps you to think through on the back end of it that, cognizant kind of unconscious, your unconscious thing, because sometimes you finish with the book, you finish with the run, and some thoughts pop up which you couldn't even think about. So that's my approach to actually relaxing, right? To really recharging, but also learning about the world, learning about the new trends, and keep up with the industry.
Cool, cool, good stuff. All right, so we've gotten this far into the conversation, Michael, and you know the name of this podcast. It's the Rock and Roll Research Podcast. We haven't talked rock and roll. And so you mentioned growing up in the Soviet Union, but you've been in the States for a while. I have no idea what your answer is going to be to this question. So I'm really excited to learn. So let's say, Michael, you're stranded on a desert island and
Ooh.
you have been granted three albums to keep you company for the rest of your days of your choosing, entirely of your choosing. What are those three albums you would choose?
Whoa, that's a very good question. Nobody asked me about that yet. So you're the first one. Wow. Wow. This is something I couldn't think about. So, but it's a very good and very interesting question. What first comes to mind? Definitely Queen's Eddie Murphy, Queen Eddie Murphy. We
Yeah,
are the champions. Definitely. So that's what
yeah,
helps me in life. That's kind of my uh song, right? So
yeah,
anthem kind of because it would help me to really focus on what is important and overcome any obstacles in my life, right? So
sure.
we keep on fighting everywhere. That's probably the motto, right? So but
Love
fighting
it.
in the good terms. So well, but when you're on an island, right, and besides just winning, getting over, right, so what helps you, what motivates you? And I think Sia, unstoppable again. Unstoppable comes to
Yeah.
mind as a second one
Wow,
to
that's really
really
inspirational so far.
build, yeah, build a ship, build a little, what is called a little raft or whatever. So and get it off the island, right? So I'm unstoppable. I win and I'm unstoppable.
Love it.
But the last one, it's more about contemplating. It's more about relaxing, and it's more okay once all said and done, and you're ready to sail, or you have that respite or break, right? So
Yeah,
I think because again, I grew up in a former capital of Imperial Russia, right? If you think of Anastasia, right? I grew up around all those palaces and
yeah.
golden leaf statues and stuff. So uh, uh, I think it's a Vivaldi, Four Seasons.
Yeah.
So I think
Nice.
very close to me. Again, growing up as a child, my parents would take me to opera and ballet in my hometown, which is the second most famous theater in the Soviet Union after Bolshoi, because people call the large theater the Bolshoi theater.
Yeah.
And I think Vivaldi helps me to go through all the emotions throughout the year season, right? If you think of it, spring, summer, fall, winter, right? So, and it helps you to recharge, relax, and be ready again because life goes in circle, right? So, 360 around. And the sun comes back, and so while in the winter it falls asleep, in the spring it wakes up and it blooms in the summer, and again it starts going down in the fall, right? And we live for that life cycle throughout our life, and it would help me definitely to keep those emotions in check. So yeah,
Huh.
those are three songs probably I would love to listen while I am on that island, like a Robinson Crusoe. So
Yeah, I love it. You clearly gave this some thought, so I appreciate that very much. Very interesting choices. I love it. I do want to say just a quick reminder, Magic Mind, this great mental wealth campaign going on here in January. If you want to check it out, be a part of it, get an awesome discount, 45%. Go to magicmind.com/rock and roll Jan. Be my hero. So cool. Hey, Michael, this has been an awesome chat. I would love to sit down and talk table tennis strategy with you at some point. I was just a hack and slasher. I needed some strategies, so I could use some tips. But great chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great chat. Thanks so much for taking the time. Let's talk soon and rock and roll.
Rock and roll. Thank you.